Among Us 2 was a cancelled online multiplayer social deduction game. The game was being developed and published by Innersloth, and the original Among Us was released back in 2018. And when the game started to grow in popularity, the team considered creating a true sequel to build off the hype and newfound dedicated fanbase. Eventually though, the team decided to take the future of the franchise in a different direction and double down on the development of Among Us 1. So let's break down everything we know about the cancelled Among Us 2 and why the game itself ceased development. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description below, so make sure to check those out and support those original writers. Also, make sure to follow me on Twitter. I should probably start to plug that more, and I'll start posting over there more as well, so check that out if you want to as well. And with that out of the way, let's get into why Among Us 2 was cancelled. The news about the title started in August of 2020. Innersloth announced in a blog post that they were beginning development of Among Us 2, and they confirmed the title. They let players know this will not immediately affect Among Us 1, and the servers will be able to support both games simultaneously. At first, the team explains why they are creating a sequel. They say, quote, "Among Us 1 has been out for over 2 years. It started as a tiny local multiplayer only game and has grown and grown. Online multiplayer took 2 months and a total rework to make happen, and 6 months per extra map, and horrible server growing pains along the way. It really was not created to be this big. Because of this, it's extremely hard to add more things without breaking existing things. Frankly, it's terrifying to add more things because the game is so fragile. Fixing this would require recreating core sections of Among Us, then making sure everything else still works on top. It's actually even harder than just making a new game. So the first goal of Among Us 2 is to be made to withstand growth. We want to add to it at least as long as Among Us, but with fewer bugs along the way." And their original reasoning for the sequel makes it sound like the game is a necessity at this point. I know they decided to cancel the project, but if the game code is still as delicate as they describe, a new version or a massive update is going to be required at some point in the future. They continue on in the blog post and announce that they were considering bringing over some of the content from Among Us 1 to the sequel. It wouldn't have been all at once, but slowly over time, and potentially even some of the maps. And they promised some changes to the original game ideas. If someone wanted 3 imposters in the game, instead the game would need to be able to withstand 12 to 15 players instead of 10. So they were talking about increasing the amount of players, increasing the amount of imposters, all of which can be done with this new game code. Next, they wanted to add options to matchmaking and help players find other players with similar playstyles. They directly mention players who want to play hide and seek, which is a mode that a lot of friends have now joined together and kind of flips the script on the game and what's possible. They also discuss custom modes or players who want to play with other people of a certain skill level. So they are very ambitious on this title, already talking about hide and seek, more custom options for players, and even potentially some skill-based matchmaking. They continued on saying they also wanted to add an account system and a friend system into the sequel as well, which is something a lot of people have been asking for. The next paragraph is a bigger section, and they talk about how they wanted to better moderate the second game. The team acknowledges the problems in the original game with hacking, bad behavior, and toxic language, so they wanted to include systems to prevent hacks, a report button, along with more moderators in the game itself. And they close out on the idea of adding more roles into the game. They state they always knew for Among Us 2 the title would add more complex systems than just crewmate versus imposter, and the way they would achieve this is with new roles that would not only add replayability, but more mechanics for advanced players to figure out, but they give no more details on what this could look like. They planned on launching the game first again in early access, and would work out from there, eventually leading to a full release. The game will cost extra, but they have considered discounting the game for Steam owners who have already played and purchased the original. The mobile version would be free, but they would keep ads, and they would still create big free content updates like map and game modes for players who are willing to actually purchase the game. They close out this section by saying in-game currency was also being considered for those players who want certain cosmetics and could support the developers directly. They close out by discussing where they were at in development, which is essentially square one. In August, they said they had no art, programming, or sound, but they say the state of the game will follow a similar development to Among Us 1, which took 6 months of development to get to early access, and another 6 more months until the final release. They announced Among Us 2 would take around the same time, if not potentially a little longer, and they are already planning to spend more time in the early access stage. So at this time, a lot of fans could consider the release date to be August 2021 for a final release, and then even before that for early access. So it was going to be a very quick turnaround for the title. And in terms of platforms, they would have first developed for PC, and then they would have moved to mobile as their second priority. Developers from Innersloth did an interview on YouTube in September of 2020, so a month after they announced the game, and they were able to answer some questions about the sequel. The team stated that for the new roles, they weren't exactly sure what these would be yet, and had planned on creating the game first, so a lot of what Among Us 2 would actually be, and then working out from there, instead of trying to theory craft and trying to understand all the mechanics of these roles without being able to test it in game. So they said they really didn't know yet, but they were planning on adding more at some point, and even they weren't 100% sure what that would look like until they got their hands on the game. They also went on to say they are working on a system to include even more color choice for the players in the game, along with an in-game voice system. In terms of the voice system itself, they said they have tried to include this before, but it didn't work from a technical standpoint, and they think they can fix this the next time around with the sequel. And for the most part, none of this is too surprising. Most of the other questions that were asked, they were already included in the original article. And if they were new questions, the developer said they did have plans for a lot of things, but the project was still so early in development, they didn't even know what they were going to do and what it would look like in a final release. So they were very cautious to not promise fans everything, as they were still developing the project and weren't sure what would actually be practical and what could be achieved. I will link the entire interview down below if you want to watch the entire thing. It is pretty interesting if you're into that. Just a few weeks later, also in September of 2020, another blog post was created on the Innersloth website and was titled The Future of Among Us. And the developers announced they were not moving forward with the development of Among Us 2. Their direct quote and reasoning said, "Us devs have had several long discussions about what we want to do with the game. When do we stop working on Among Us 1? What content goes into Among Us 2? The main reason we are shooting for a sequel is because the codebase of Among Us 1 is so outdated and not built to support adding so much new content. However, seeing how many people are enjoying Among Us 1 really makes us want to be able to support the game and take it to the next level. We've decided to cancel Among Us 2 and instead put all of our focus into improving Among Us 1. All of the content we had planned for Among Us 2 will instead go into Among Us 1. This is probably the more difficult choice because it means we're going deep into the core code of the game and reworking several parts of it. We have lots of things planned, and we're excited to bring new content to everyone as you continue to enjoy playing." And they announced that some of the mechanics that would be coming sooner rather than later would be the friends and account system, along with the new map, which has now all been announced and is coming soon. And the move isn't too surprising. Among Us 1 is still massively popular and has a dedicated community that is craving new content. So it makes sense for the developers to push more maps and give new content to the original, than to potentially split their community with Among Us 2. It could bring them to a situation where half of the community moves on to the sequel and the other half stays with the original, and that way it'd be harder for servers and harder for the developers to decide which game to actually move forward with. Or if the community didn't accept the sequel at all, it could lead to a lot of wasted development time for a project fans don't like, and they just continue to play the original anyways. It makes sense from a business standpoint as of now. Should we expect anything in the future? Well, everything I mentioned before that was coming to Among Us 2, they have said will be coming to Among Us 1, so different game modes, more custom matches, bigger games themselves, more colors, and so much more. And I know the team did announce the project is canceled, as they have decided to work on the original and make that better. And it will definitely consume the team's time for the coming months and years, but I wouldn't write off an Among Us sequel forever. If the team was already considering a sequel at one point, I could definitely see them revisiting the series eventually. potentially when they do want to actually do a big graphics overhaul, add some more content, and really ensure that the game has a really good code base that can last for years to come. And for the most part, that is why Among Us 2 was cancelled. As always, make sure to like and share this video, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.